friends, today's topic of discussion is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi theory and practice. As we are all aware that the kind of contribution which was made by Mahatma Gandhi or Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi in the freedom movement, and there were other leaders, those who contributed significantly in the national movement, and the role of the various kinds of leaders in the national movement along with Gandhi has been a question of debate among historians. And Gandhi largely has been criticized and applauded on different kinds of ground, that whether the kind of things which he preached in terms of the theory which we understand in terms of Gandhism, and the kind of practices in which he involved, whether he was true to that. In terms of readings, one can refer to Hindu Swaraj by Mahatma Gandhi himself, thereafter My Experiments with Truth by Mahatma Gandhi, and Tendulkar's collected works of Mahatma Gandhi, all these kinds of readings, and there have been so many others which one can refer when one is talking about Mahatma Gandhi and his contribution to the national movement, and also in the framework of the various kinds of movements which he led. Gandhi has also been talked about not only in the kind of work which he associated himself with in the context of India's struggle for independence, but at the same time his work in South Africa, with which he became very popular, so that when he arrived in India in 1915, we find that Gandhi himself was a celebrity at that point of time. He was very well known for the kind of work which he did against racism in South Africa. So generally it is being argued that Gandhi led by example, and he was ready to do certain things which he expected from others, and there are critics, those who reject this kind of an idea, that many a times Gandhi appeared to be more dictator in nature, and these kinds of arguments, they have been leveled by some of the historians in the context of the developments of that particular period. And some of the scholars, they have also argued that Gandhi was some kind of a contractor, and he gave the kind of work to some of the subcontractors, those who were the second rung of leadership in the Congress. So we will talk about the various kinds of issues in the context of the kind of work which was done by Gandhi. And we find that when you tend to see his work which was being done in various parts of the world, especially South Africa, and thereafter his writings in Hindu Swaraj, or writings as Hindu Swaraj or My Experiments with Truth, or in Young India, we find that we are able to in a way understand what Gandhi actually wanted to impart to the masses, because that is also the period when we find that the mass movement in India, they also begin during the Gandhian phase, beginning from the non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement and the Quit India movement. All these three movements have been very, very relevant from the point of view of the national movement. Then we also talk about the kind of constructive work in which Gandhi engaged himself, when we find that various ashrams, they were being opened at different places, and the inmates of the ashram, they were trying to lead a very simple life, and at the same time they are also engaged in the constructive work so that they are able to contribute something to the society. And we also find that how the removal of untouchability was one of the important concerns of Gandhian ideas, and all through his life he was engaged in such kind of a work where such kind of a malpractice in the form of untouchability could be removed. And Gandhi also preached the Hindu-Muslim unity, in that sense that we find that Gandhi was making all sorts of efforts to maintain the kind of communal harmony which was there in India. And it has also generally been talked about what the Gandhi thought and what he put into practice. Generally they were in consonance, and the two weapons of Gandhi, truth and ahimsa, they were consistently used by Gandhi in different movements which he initiated, and he personally believed that truth and ahimsa will be the weapons which will be very important in terms of mobilizing the masses, because India being a huge country, and the people, they do not have that kind of a patience, or they do not have that kind of a capacity that they can go on in a movement for a very long period of time. So the movements, they have to adhere to a certain timeline, and the people, they have to recuperate in a certain manner, And we find that is how there is some kind of a consistency in the belief and action of Gandhi, and we find that various kinds of tactics which have been used by Gandhi in form of methods, that he also is engaged in keeping fast. That was one of the things which Gandhi undertakes at different points of time, and satyagraha was one of the important weapons of Gandhi. And we find that when Gandhi was talking about passive resistance, he did not mean that the person who is in a way engaged in passive resistance is a weak person. Rather, a person who is more of a strong person will only be able to undertake the passive resistance. And we find that how the ideological position of Gandhi in terms of Satya and Ahimsa has been debated among so many historians, and how Gandhi was also able to in a way transform the nature of the Indian national movement in terms of its ideological position. And the various kinds of techniques to counter the colonial forces was also undertaken by him. And we also find that how both Satya and Ahimsa, both of them, they became the hallmark of Gandhian phase. And Gandhi also talks about the means and ends, and his beliefs in the methods, they had logic of their own. Gandhi wanted to maintain the sanctity of the means to attain the ends. So what Gandhi says is that our means should also be in a way, in that sense, ethical, so that the ends which are attained, they also remain ethical. So it was very important from the Gandhian point of view, and we also find that the way he carried out the kind of politics which was initiated by Gandhi tries to maintain the kind of basic principles which he had in his life. And Gandhi was largely, many a times we see that he was very religious in that sense, and we find that whatever ideological orientation Gandhi had, he had some kind of a deep belief, and the kind of thoughts, the Gandhian thoughts, they were also influenced by the values of Vaishnavism and tradition of Jainism. So Gandhi believed in religion, and he stuck to the religion in the various kinds of ideas which he had, and this kind of fine ideas of Vaishnavism and the tradition of Jainism, they were being followed by Gandhi at different points of time. And we also see that how Bhagavad Gita also had a great impact on Gandhi, and apart from that, Gandhi also evolved his thought by reading Ruskin, Thoreau and Tolstoy as well. So Gandhian thought was in a way a mixture of various kinds of ideas which were there in different parts of the world, and even Ruskin, Thoreau, we find that they were also well versed with the Indian thought as well, and many a times even in their thought we find echoes of, as I told you, the ideals of Bhagavad Gita, and Gandhi finds, or in a way places, a lot of importance on Bhagavad Gita as well. And when one tends to see the Gandhian movements in that sense, so in the initial part we find that the Champaran Satyagraha in 1917 was the beginning of the Gandhian movements in India, and thereafter we have the Ahmedabad Mill Strike in 1918, Kheda Satyagraha in 1918, and Rowlatt Act again, which came in the 1918, against which Gandhi in a way initiates his movement, which was the anti-Rowlatt Satyagraha, which was initiated. And we also find later it also culminated into the non-cooperation movement. So we find that the various kinds of movements which were initiated by Gandhi, Champaran movement for example, was against the kind of maltreatment which was being given to the peasants, how the peasants, they were being exploited by the people, and by the people those who were holding the lands, or the people those who were managing the affairs in that region. And we also find that they were being forced to cultivate indigo in their lands. It was some kind of a forcible kind of an idea which had led to some kind of a repulsion in Gandhi. And we find that the Ahmedabad Mill Strike was with regard to the demand by the workers to be provided the higher wages, and Gandhi sided with the workers on this issue. And we find that how Kheda Satyagraha, Gandhi was also successful in that. So these were the three important initial contributions of Gandhi, and thereafter we find that how the Rowlatt Act, which was talking about no appeal, no vakil and no dalil, and it was related to preventive detention, and how Gandhi in that sense led the anti-Rowlatt agitation, and later this kind of agitation also culminated in that sense that how the non-cooperation movement was launched in 1920, and thereafter we find that the roots of the non-cooperation movement, in that sense they were there in the Khilafat movement of 1919-1920, and how with the Turkish dismemberment of the empire by the colonial rulers British, we find that Gandhi supported that kind of a movement which was there in Turkey, and how he with this opportunity he believed that Hindus and Muslims they would come together, and that is how, and many times such kind of Gandhian ideals they have been criticized by some of the scholars, and they have argued that such kind of appeasing kind of things they were being done by the leaders at different points of time. And in the context of the kind of non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement and the Quit India movement, which have been the Gandhian movements in that sense, because we find that Gandhi was the most important factor in the Congress politics of those times. We also see during this particular period that how Gandhi was also evolving as a mass leader, and during all these three movements we find that especially in the Quit India movement, which was also some kind of a movement in which a lot of violence was also being used, but Gandhi refused to criticize that kind of a violence, and which was more spontaneous in nature, because now by that time maybe he had also started believing in the sense that the kind of violence which was perpetrated by the state was a far greater violence than the violence which was being committed by the people. So when you talk about the Gandhian ideas, we find that the term Ramraj was used by him to explain his idea of an ideal society. And Gandhi was a passionate follower of Lord Ram and one of the incarnations of Lord Vishnu, who is considered by Hindus as Maryada Purushottam Ram, that is the best man who lived within constraints of the society. So in that sense Gandhi feels that Ram was a dutiful son, an affectionate brother, a truthful husband, a sincere, genuine and a just king. So in that sense the concept of Ramraj was in the context of Lord Ram, and therefore it evoked an ideal state in which there was no class distinction, lack of misery and scarcity, no sex differences, lack of disease, and existence of people without any fear, hatred and jealousy. So we find that Gandhi was talking in the framework of a society which was an ideal society, and whatever he had read in that sense, we find that Gandhi was trying to create or trying to imagine a kind of society where the social evils they were not there, and a person who was living in the society, he was living in a very calm and composed manner, and he was very confident that all which was due to him will be given to him. So we find that by Ramraj, Gandhi indicated the rule of Ram, the king of Ayodhya, and Gandhi also made it quite evident that his Ram is not the Ram of Ayodhya. He employed the term Ram to explain God, the eternal, the unborn and the one without the second. So we find that when you talk about the Ramraj of Gandhi, he was trying to talk about the God in that sense, which was the eternal God, which was unborn and the one without the second. So in that sense we find that Gandhi believed that truth was God, and he used the term Ramraj to explain the kingdom of God on earth, and he desired for this kingdom of God on the earth in the present and not in the heaven in the future. So Gandhi was in that sense a rationalist and a realist, in that sense that he wanted that this kind of a kingdom of God should be there in the present and not in the future in that sense, and he believed that every individual has that kind of a position or that kind of a duty where he transforms himself and he believes and this kind of a belief system should be able to transform himself so that the society is able to gain some kind of benefit from the individuals, and the society is also benefited by the transformation of the individual. So we find that how Gandhi uses different kind of symbols and tools in a way as khadi was being used to realize the aims of self-dependence through the indigenous production. And the active involvement of one and all in the national movement could also be achieved by the use of khadi, because people, they were in a way making their own cloth through charkha. And khadi was also in a way serve as the sign of unity of India against the British authority as well, because when India would propagate the forceful message of the Indian self-reliance and dignified existence, even in the most challenging situations or times, then they will be able to handle the situation which was produced during the colonial period in a much better way. So Gandhi also realized that the village industries of India, they were being sacrificed for the British trade and commerce, and how the deindustrialization in India was caused by the import of the British cloth, and it gave a severe jolt to the Indian handicraftsmen. So Gandhi realized that if the people, those who do not have a job in that sense, or the people, those who are engaged in agriculture but can devote some time to the production of khadi when they are at their home, then the primary industries of India, they could be revived in that sense, and the dependence of Indians on the foreign cloth, that can be reduced. So this idea of self-reliance by engaging themselves in the production of khadi, using khadi through the usage of charkha, was one of the important concerns of Gandhi. And we also find that not only from the economic point of view, not only from the point of view of self-reliance, but also from the point of view that Gandhi was able to generate a kind of an awareness among the masses, and how the deindustrialization in India was caused because of the policies of the British, that how when more and more British goods in terms of British cloth came to India, then we find that the Indian indigenous industries, they suffered a lot, and Gandhi now in a way wanted to revive them in a certain manner, that more and more people, they are not only indulging in self-reliance, but at the same time these people, they are also in a way trying to produce some for the country as well. So in that sense, when we tend to understand khadi, it became the emblem of nationalism, and khadi had different kind of functions. The economic function of generating income for the rural masses was one of the important function of khadi, apart from the political function of promoting nationalism, the social function of ameliorating the oppressed by focusing on the dignity of work, and the moral function of cultivating qualities of self-suffering. So we find that khadi had different kinds of functions, and how from the political, social, and from the moral point of view, it was in a way trying to transform the Indian society. And we also see that how when the oppressed, they will be in a way go to some kind of an improved situation, then they will also have the dignity of work, which was very, very important. And how unless the Indians, they will undergo self-suffering, then only they will be able to revive themselves, then only they will be able to in a way participate in the national movement as well. And we also find that Swadeshi spirit was also emphasized during this time, and for Gandhi, Swadeshi was a theoretical term, and khadi the real manifestation of Swadeshi. We find that the idea of Swadeshi was very, very important in 1905, when Swadeshi movement was launched by the leaders of the Congress, and how we find that these various leaders, all of them, they participated in the Swadeshi movement. And we also see that khadi was an important multi-use tool for the education of the people as well, and Gandhi viewed the spinning wheel as a tool to achieve village reconstruction at local stage, and as a solution to Swaraj at national stage, and a force for creating peace at international level. So Gandhi in a way was talking about spinning wheel as a symbol, and this symbol or an instrument or a tool, it was to achieve the village reconstruction at different stages, because at the local level it was some kind of a solution to the Swaraj in that sense at the national stage, and thereafter it was also a force for creating the peace at international level as well. So we find that if we try to understand the worldview of Gandhi, the hand spinning and khadi, they were integral to the national regeneration, and he has supported it for various reasons, that how the spinning wheel or hand spinning could be easily learnt, and it can be the readiest employment to those who have time and want to earn some kind of a money, and it did not need any kind of a money or capital in that sense, so it was economical also. And self-employment was an important concern in the context of Gandhi, and how people, those who are there, those who are idle in the villages, so we find that this kind of an idleness in the villages or even in the urban areas, that could be removed by hand spinning and khadi. And we also find that it will also provide some kind of an immediate reprieve during the famine and the paucity or the kind of shortage which was there. So Gandhi had multiple kind of aims, we find, by employing the usage of khadi and also the spinning wheel. Then he also talks in the framework of the drain of wealth, which was caused by the purchase of the foreign cloth, and this could be also stopped by it, because when Indians, they are going to produce more and more cloth, then they will not need imported cloth. And we also find that masses, they have no dislike for it, in the sense that it is a powerful tool of securing the cooperation among the masses as well. And as I told you or talked about, that how one should not depend on the others, this is what Gandhi argued, and one should do one's own work. So as a personal choice as well, Gandhi focused on the individual self-reliance and asked others to do their own work. And the various ashrams which were opened by Gandhi, they also propagated these kinds of ideas which were related to the self-reliance. And it is also being argued that Gandhi himself cleaned his own toilet, and he fought against untouchability, and Mulk Raj Anand's novel Untouchable is a representative of the anguish of untouchables in a society where they have no dignity and self-respect. And Gandhi also provided some kind of suggestions to Mulk Raj Anand before this novel was published, because Mulk Raj Anand met him, and we find that they had some kind of a conversation regarding this. And we also see that when you talk about the ideas of Gandhi, then we find that Gandhi in a way also talks about the national unity and the holistic national unity, and the kind of gap which was there between the haves and the have-nots. And Gandhi was in a way Gandhi in a way realized the economic disparity which was there in the society. And Gandhi in a way talks about the idea of trusteeship which is there, and Gandhi says that this idea was important from this perspective, and it was also intrinsic in the Gandhian notion of Sarvodaya, which was the maximum benefit of all. So in that sense, we find that the various Gandhian ideas, they were in a way very beneficial to the society. And Gandhi believed that when one was engaging in the idea of self-reliance, then only one will be able to achieve the various kind of objectives which are there in the context of the national movement. So we can in a way summarize our discussion in the sense that the contribution of Gandhi to the national movement has been immense, and it has also been debated amongst various historians. But at the same time, one also has to realize that Gandhi was working within a framework where different kinds of groups or sections of society, they were also fighting for their own interest, and it was a very challenging kind of a task to manage or to bring together all those kinds of different interests at one platform. And Gandhi in a way was successful in that, because the various sections of the society, those who has waged the kind of war against the British, they were being brought together by Gandhi at different levels, and he was able to communicate that the various kinds of ideas which were being communicated or talked about by Gandhi, they were very relevant from the social point of view, and they were also very relevant for achieving independence. So in that sense, the contribution of Gandhi and Gandhism has been very relevant to the national movement. So we will talk further about other aspects of Gandhi and his contribution in the context of the national movement in our next lecture. Till then, thank you very much.